Yo people, welcome back to the Bad Batch reviews, this time season 3 episodes 1, 2 and 3. So episode 1 overall was a good start to the season. It really built up Mount Tantis, got us familiar to what kind of things happen in there, what exactly is being done, how everything operates, and on top of that, we got to see the everyday schedule of Omega. It's been, I want to say, about 4 or 5 months since she got captured, since the end of season 2. The episode did a good job of being efficient with the time it had and teasing the dark plans and the whole point of this base. They teased a lot of things such as that Batcher animal coming in to save them eventually, Crosshair changing his tune for Omega, which both happened in episode 3. And they kept teasing Omega being force sensitive, which I'll talk about as well in the episode 3 review. So as for the storyline, it's obvious that this is a cloning base. They're working directly for Palpatine, trying to make a force sensitive being, as we know, kind of like what they're doing with the Mandalorian. We saw that the clones had to give blood every day pretty much for the M count testing. Basically, they're seeing if the blood will reject Palpatine's midichlorians, I think, as he's looking for a new host. When he does pass, he has a new host, as we saw in The Rise of Skywalker and through Snoke. I think that this is by far the most interesting thing that this show has about it. They finally are starting to tease it and they're explaining it more and more as every episode goes by. We saw that Nala Se kept deleting Omega's blood sample every day, obviously because she knows Omega is force sensitive, and if the Empire finds out, then she will basically be tested on forever until they get it right, and this will probably lead to her death. So I do think Nala Se will probably get killed in the end, by the end of the season. I'm expecting a lot of eliminations by the end of this season, if I'm being honest, but it's Disney, so let's have zero expectations as always. But yeah, a solid first episode from the Bad Batch. I'd give it a 7 out of 10, that's being generous. Nothing too crazy, but it showed the environment, the conditions of Mount Tantus, it built it up. We got familiar with it. We didn't even see any of the Bad Batch members, just Omega and Crosshair. But I liked the dark tone that they started off with. I think when Omega is sad, it's a bit cringe, like I can't take it serious. Her voice just sounds weird. Like when she was trying to do the whole convincing Crosshair to join her. Hopefully this optimistic side can get eliminated as well, because it's a bit childish. It's like she's not understanding the severity of what's happening. She's very naive. I thought the death of Tech would actually make her a bit more dark, a bit more realistic, finally wake up to what's happening, but she still stayed the same, which I don't like because she's a kid and there has to be some sort of character development. But yeah, anyways, episode 2, and this one was more basic. It was basically Hunter and Wrecker getting clues, trying to see where Omega got taken to. It was kind of weird to see just 2 members left from the Bad Batch. It started off as 6. Crosshair obviously turned evil, Echo left, Tech died, and Omega got captured. Now, this episode could have easily been filler, but they tried to use it efficiently, again trying to tie it into the Clone Wars with the Pikes and the Durand family, which we saw, I believe, in an earlier season of the Bad Batch. It served as a world building episode and just a way to get some more Hunter and Wrecker content since they didn't appear in episode 1. Anyways, basically the whole point of this was to get info about Hemlock's lab. They obviously find it, they see that it's being destroyed. They then run into some young clones that got left behind by the Empire, but luckily they managed to escape the lab before it got destroyed. It was interesting that they get to tell their side of the story, kind of what the Empire's been doing, and again, their blood got tested on, so the events of episode 1 happened to them as well. And it seems like this blood testing on clones is a nationwide, galaxy-wide thing that is happening. The clones are all round basically prisoners and slaves. It was kind of sad to see that the clones that we saw who were kids in the Clone Wars obviously grew up in this uncertainty and this betrayal, which I think is a pretty interesting point of view to get, since this age group isn't really spoken about in terms of Order 66 and the bigger picture, since we never really think about what happened to the troopers that were too young to be full clone troopers and they were making their way through the ranks. But yeah, long story short, nature and the Empire's created creatures tried to attack them in the lab and in general in the jungle. They get the info that they could from what the lab had, and they managed to escape in one piece, along with the 3 young clones who are going to get taken to a new opportunity, a fresh start in life in that island that we saw at the end of season 2, ultimately getting one step closer to the primary goal, which is finding Omega. So overall for me, I'd give it a 5.5 out of 10, nothing too crazy. Now, last but not least, episode 3, the best episode of the 3 that we've had so far. It starts out with Omega doing the day-to-day stuff like in episode 1. Omega gets her blood tested, but before Nala Se can delete it, Hemlock arrives to inform about an unexpected guest, which obviously ends up being Palpatine. Nala Se warns Omega about her blood. She needs to basically flee, which she does with Crosshair. She notices Crosshair's hand as well. It's getting worse. We saw in episode 1 that Crosshair was shaking, so goodbye to any good aim in the future. And we actually see this throughout the episode that he starts fist fighting instead of using his gun for the most parts, especially at the end when they're trying to do the final getaway. And whatever they did to him in the experiments, whether it was forcing midichlorians on him or whatever that was, as we can see, it's made him lose his super heightened good aim. Now, back with Palpatine, they show him the progress and he looks into the tube or whatever it is that is the host or whatever they're creating in the lab, and he smiles. So the obvious answer is that's probably Snoke in the tank. However, from the current events that are happening up to the sequels, there's still a 50-year gap. So I don't know how they can make this whole thing just flesh out for 50 years. So I don't think it will be him. I'd much rather see a young Palpatine, or if they do the Snoke storyline, I hope that, I guess, the original host, the DNA that is being spliced with the midichlorians and the clones, actually came from Plagueis. I'd want to see Plagueis associated to this in some way, shape or form. Have Palpatine have some sick, twisted plan about how he wants to see Plagueis get cloned, become his apprentice, some sort of messed up story, but I don't think Disney has the minerals for it. Anyways, we then get taken back to Omega. She's leaving with Crosshair. That Emre clone tries to stop them. She ends up alerting the whole base, basically snitching on them when they escape. The entire base goes into some lockdown and then they go into search patrols. They will not rest until they find these two. However, Omega's blood results come in and it exposes the fact that she is actually force sensitive as many people predicted. Hemlock finds out and tells his troops to let them escape because he basically has the entire backing of the Empire, which I assume can go from Darth Vader to bounty hunters like Cad Bane, Fennec Shand, who we've already seen in Season 2, Bosk, Dengar, anyone basically. Maybe a young Boba Fett and he finally gets to meet Omega, who knows. We know Rex and Echo are meeting with Hunter and Wrecker in the future episode, maybe the next one, maybe episode 5, who knows. So we'll be getting good cameos from the light side. Now let's see what the dark side's cooking with the cameos. But yeah, overall, I think this episode was an 8.5 out of 10 for me. It did the job it had to. It announced the whole Project Necromancer, Palpatine cameo as well, those are always good. We got action scenes. I don't like that they're connecting all of this rich storyline to something as stupidly written as the sequels. Hopefully they can squeeze in another story before the sequels and make Luke the protagonist, or just have someone else deal with this threat. It could even be the storyline of when Luke faces his own clone, or maybe when he faces Sabayoth. They still have 50 years, I can't stress that enough, so they can easily fit another storyline where this rich content doesn't get wasted in the sequels. But if they don't, then whatever. It's all about personal canon anyways these days. Like I keep saying, zero expectations. It's just ideas that I have. Maybe they could happen, probably won't happen. But yeah, as always, drop your thoughts down below in the comments. Hit the like button, sub to the channel if you haven't already and if you enjoyed the content. Thank you for your time and have a great rest of your day.